yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming along today. You're giving up your evening. We're going to try to make today kind of fun and interactive and relaxed, so just enjoy yourselves, because you are giving up your time and actually want to try and learn as much as we can and perhaps even enjoy ourselves. I was a bit nervous about coming here. I don't have to say, I don't know. It's embarrassing, and that healthcare doesn't have more engagement with the local authority. And I would love to know how the local authority works. So we'll see if we can tease out some questions about how government works. I'd like to learn more about that anyway. So my name is Tal. I'm a GP. I've been here for 20-something years. Seems a long time ago. I must have started being a GP when I was about 10, I reckon. But I've been pretty much in central Hounslow. So interestingly, I've got one or two patients here as well. So it's so nice to see some friendly faces and people who I've known for quite a while. Hounslow has changed in the time that I've been here, and healthcare has changed, and the council has changed. And actually, it'd be interested to tease out some of those things, see if we can learn something from history. One of the other reasons I've been asked to do this role today is because general practice and healthcare is working more collaboratively. So there are 5 something called primary care networks. I won't bore you with it now, and perhaps we can pick it up later on. But I chair a group of practices that cover this area. So we are completely aware of the challenges from a healthcare perspective and some of the things that we need to do. And interestingly, the challenges involve not pills and potions, but they involve housing, education, and employment. So actually, this is a perfect, for me, this is a fantastic opportunity to get to know the leadership of the council and actually to learn stuff myself. So that's me, and then if we do a round of introductions.
Thank you, Tal. Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Shantanu Rajawat. I am the leader of the council, and I also hold the finance and resources portfolio as well.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Lily Bath, and I'm a councillor in the Bedfont ward, and I recently took on the adult social care, health services and public health and social care integration. So our paths might cross, Chair. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Councillor Salman Shaheen, Councillor for Isleworth and Cabinet Member for Culture, Leisure and Public Spaces.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Ajmer Gariwal, Hounslow Central Ward is which I represent, and I've recently taken over the Cabinet portfolio for resident support, communications and equalities.
Hi, my name is Councillor Shivraj Garewal, and I'm from Heston Central Ward Councillor, and I'm a Cabinet Member for Infrastructure, Highways, Parking and Customer Service.
I'm Councillor Ragwinder Singh Sidhu. I'm from Bedfont Ward. I'm new in the Cabinet, and I hold portfolio for safety and regulations.
Hi, Councillor Catherine Dunn, Cabinet Member for Climate, Environment and Transport.
Hi, I'm Councillor Samir Chaudhry, Ward Councillor for Hounslow Heath Ward, Cabinet Member for Education, Children's Employment and Skills.
Hello, I'm Councillor Tom Bruce. I'm Councillor for Hounslow South Ward. I'm the Deputy Leader of the Council, and I hold the portfolio for assets, regeneration and development.
Thank you very much. So the way this works today, so obviously we need to relax and enjoy ourselves, and we can have it. We've got some pre-existing questions that people have sent online. Some people are here in the audience, others are not. For those who are not, I'll read out their questions. Anybody who submitted a question online will all have an answer to that question. Some of that we've had like quite a lot of responses actually, so quite a few questions. Some themes we've picked out, and I've got some questions that I'll put to the cabinet shortly. They are not aware of the questions for what it's worth, so then this carries on for about an hour and a half or something. There's refreshments there, so if you feel like you need a drink or you need a little snack, then, you know, don't feel like you have to, you know, pay attention and you're not at school. So you can mingle, you can go backwards and forwards, get yourself a drink, make yourselves comfortable. So I think perhaps you could start with you, Councillor. This is the leader of the cabinet. So why are we here?
Well, so thank you, Tal, and thank you to agree to chair. It's a daunting task chairing a meeting anyway. So we're here because we were committed to listening to our residents and engaging with our residents and changing the way we engage with our residents, and more specifically here in Meadowbank, this fantastic facility, I hope you'll agree, many of you may not have even known that it existed, and it's an absolutely fantastic venue, and we've got some really exciting plans for this place, and it's part of that push to bring services much closer to our residents, to have things that are relevant to the residents in the area and services where they are. And so as part of that programme, it's quite an ambitious programme, we'll be transforming Meadowbank into what we call a community hub. And that's already started, that work's already started. But as part of that, the library will also be moving from its existing location in Cranford to this place as well. But as well as that, here in Meadowbank, we have a fantastic offer for adult education, and that will continue. And then, as I said, we'll be adding services to that, including the library. But also, we are very responsive to our residents. So we have community hubs set up across the borough, Central Hounslow, Brentford, and there are more coming. And we really want to be responsive to what residents are telling us they need in their local area. So they don't necessarily need to come to Hounslow House or go online, but the services are there where they want them to be. And that's really important. We call it the radical overhaul of engagement. But it's also a localities model, and we think that that's the best way that the council can really respond to residents.
Thank you. I mean, I have to admit, I've never been here before, and it's amazing. It really is. And actually, if the council is looking for ideas of how to use this space and how to bring in other services, and you know, it's about kind of bringing services to where the need is. Then if anyone's got any ideas, you're welcome to take any suggestions now. But otherwise, we can move on to our first question. But do get involved in the engagement process.
Sorry, and I should have said the engagement will run for about the next 6 weeks, but it's continuous.
Yeah. Right. Oh, sorry. Go for it. If you could just introduce yourself and also say in what capacity you are. So whether you're a resident or if you represent an organisation.
I'm from the Ivy Bridge Estate. My name is Shahid Chaudhry. I retired last year, finally. The reason why I've got the mic is to ask, will there be questions from the floor? Okay. That's
absolutely.
All. Yeah, that's all I'm...
No, absolutely. Look, if we're not here to talk at you. We're saying we want lots and lots of questions from the floor. And if need be, we can group them together and stuff. This is the last bit of sun you're going to get this year, and you're in here. So ask away. We'll make your evening worthwhile. So we definitely, and think of questions as we're chatting away. Otherwise, you would be at school, wouldn't you? And we don't want that. Right. Question one. I'll just kick off to see how we get on. This question is from Shamir Prasler, who is doing caring duties at the moment, actually, so can't be with us. So thank you for that. But she'll be watching from online when all of this is available online afterwards. Here's the question. It feels like we're facing a mental health and well-being crisis in the post-pandemic world. Lots of people are suffering silently, and very little is done at the council level to promote mental health and well-being. I'm interested to know, what are the council's plans to improve the situation? Would you like to take that, Councillor?
Yeah. Thank you. I'm happy to take that. I'll try and answer it as well as I can. So obviously the council has a big priority in terms of ensuring that its residents' mental health, emotional and physical well-being is as best as it can be. and it does that through a variety of ways. So the council will always have public health campaigns that you will be able to, see online or go to the council website, and those public health campaigns are basically around well-being. So, for example, next week we're going to be launching a campaign around suicide awareness, and the reason is that there is, unfortunately, we do have suicide, and we need to raise awareness about what people and residents can do if they're coming across somebody who might even have a low-level mental health problem, or they themselves might be suffering from mental health issues, and what they can do. And what we are trying to advertise in our campaign is to try and get residents not just to be aware about mental health issues, but also take training, and you can do it online, a suicide awareness training, which is around 20 minutes. So so that's one specific campaign, but in general, what we will always do as a council is try and connect residents to services in the borough, whether it's services around mental health well-being, it could be the council's mental health support teams, it could be low-level mental health, or it could be a crisis. So there are services available. There's obviously the mental health crisis 24-hour line, and we work very closely with our health partners to do whatever we can. And it's in many different ways. So it's also around, and I'm sure Councillor Shaheen will talk about our work around parks and being physically active, and making sure that we have enough well-being sort of programs and initiatives for residents to feel well in general, whether it's physical or emotional well-being. So we want all of our residents to be as healthy as possible, so we'll do whatever we can possibly, whether it's working with our health partners to look at high-level mental health, or just general mental health and well-being.
Thank you. I think it's really interesting that this question is saying what is the council doing about mental health, and actually we can explore how healthcare, what healthcare is doing, and perhaps us working together can result in something that is better than individual parts. Councillor Shaheen, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you. I'm very grateful to the person who asked the question. I'm also grateful, Lily, for your answer, and particularly the work around suicide prevention, suicide awareness. My own cousin committed suicide many years ago, and I understand personally how important it is to have that information out there. And I'm also, I'm very grateful for you updating us all on all the formal programs the council is involved in, the campaigns the council is involved in. But it goes, as you said, much further than that. In my own work, it's really about providing the facilities, the infrastructure, the space in which people can feel both their mental and their physical health are being looked after. That has become, as noted, that has become so much more important during and in the wake of the pandemic. And that's why we're ploughing another 5 million into our parks for the improvement of our green space. It's why we're opening up new allotments, new community gardens, new orchards, and using these facilities as places where people can come as a little haven, a little bit of respite away from the stresses and strains of daily life. And I think that is having those places is a key part of helping people live fulfilling lives.
I love that, and especially things like there's lots of evidence actually that shows that art and the environment has a huge impact on mental health. Many years ago, I used to work as a junior doctor at the Bethlehem Hospital, which is near King's College Hospital, and there they had art therapy as part of the treatment, and actually some of the work done by patients who were admitted is really interesting, and I think this is a good example actually of us working together a little bit more, because we have lots of resources and ideas, but actually we're not familiar with the channels and stuff, and we should definitely have a conversation. Councillor Chaudhry, do you want to?
Thank you very much. I think it's a really important question from a carer's point of view. from the council and within the mental health. I think it's extremely important to just let our residents know that we have been working very closely with all our other departments. For example, within dementia, we've been having dementia cafes, but at the same time, where the residents are coming and enjoying their times, their carers have been coming and talking about mental health. And then we've had health and well-being events where we have been promoting a good mental health for the youngsters in our leisure centres again. I was at the National Women's Day for the Health in the Holy Trinity Church, where we talked about mental health, and with the Mind in Hounslow, one of the charity Mind for Ealing and Hounslow, they have been doing great work with us as well. But with our carers short break, which we've started, I think towards the end of last year, where it's just kind of a rest break for the carers to go and do what they need to do, but at the same time think about how important their own health and well-being is. Thank you.
And actually, I think I've watched some of the YouTube videos here. There's lots of interesting services that you may not be aware of, and I think it's the job of the council to be able to kind of try to communicate that as clearly as we can, and for our partners to be able to share those services as well. So
yeah, I think that's why what we did last year, towards the end of last year, we did a very good campaign for unpaid carers as well, where we kind of were promoting our services but trying to get engaged with them as much as we can.
And events like this really help.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
It's not just the people here, but people who watch it on YouTube afterwards, and you can take clips and promote those bits elsewhere. Councillor Adjwell.
Thank you. I was actually thinking of going home because the leader took my thunder about the community hub.
I'll turn his mic off.
Anyway, with the community hubs, talking and sharing your problems is very, very important as well. So that's where mental health can come in. When services, you talk about services, your worries, we can send you into the right direction. And that can help a lot, because depression, when cost of living, worries and bills and everything can lead to depression, mental health worries. So talking to someone can help a lot. And that's why we've got community hubs all over the borough in localities where people can easily access the services now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think sometimes when you think of mental health, you think, oh, hospitals and this, that and the other. But actually, it is a cup of coffee with a person who has a shared interest with you, whatever that may be. So that community piece and this place that we're in as well is a really good place to start.
Yeah. Yeah, and whilst it's not directly linked to the question, but it's important just to complete that circle. As a council, we can't do everything on our own, so we need to work very closely with our partners. But one of the things that I'm particularly focused on in a post-COVID world is young people's mental health as well, in schools as well, and working with our schools to have that safe space to have those conversations, because quite frankly, they may not come into a community hub, but actually if there's something in school that we can help them with, then we absolutely must do that, because that is a problem that we need to face head on.
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, everybody.
If you could just say your name and
sorry. Yes.
And
my name's Ian May. I'm one of the Avenue Park Friends. We're a small group that's trying to promote the use of Avenue Park. We've managed to get the funding for the outdoor gym that's recently been redone. And we'd like to see even more improvements in the park. But I'm very interested in hearing this kick off about mental health, because in my workplace I'm a mental health first aider, so I understand how important it is. And I believe you just said about having a cup of coffee, and it's very true. I mean, I get my colleagues sometimes, they'll come to my office and we just sit and chat, and sometimes it really helps them. I'm not a counsellor, I'm just a first aider, so I point them in the direction that they need to be sent if they need further help. But you're so right, sometimes it's just a cup of coffee. And going to the park is good, because sometimes just going for a walk is a good way to wind down and relax and collect your thoughts as well. So,
I thank you so much for sharing that insight. I just couldn't agree more. If you look at the statistics, then, you know, it actually affects, when you think about suicide rates and stuff, it is younger people and it is men. But people don't feel able or, you know, comfortable enough to be able to even discuss how they're feeling, even to their friends or their family. So I think, look, there is a little bit of stigma still, actually, even to this day, around mental health. I think words matter. Mental health, in my head, signifies an illness which you can't see. You might be making it up. It's a bad thing. Maybe we should be talking about mental wellness. You know, like just like going to the gym. Maybe we should be like little breathing exercises. Maybe it should be popping around to your neighbours and having a cup of coffee and stuff. The workplace mental health is another huge piece of work. I think in the post-COVID work, I think the three particular cohorts I worry about. One is kids at school and stuff with potentially complex family environments and housing and stuff. The second is men, young men, and the third is work. There's the cost of living crisis, which is overseeing things. And look, we're not going to fix that with a cup of coffee and things, but it's a place to start. And one of the biggest challenges sometimes in mental health is knowing that there's a problem and having a little bit of insight into that. So thank you for sharing that. I've watched the YouTube video of one of these events previously, and Councillor Bruce, you get lots of housing questions. Now, most of them are around, can I have housing and what planning permissions and stuff, but can I ask you, how does the council take into account the mental health or the space? Is that a consideration when you're doing building projects and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there are loads of things that are taken into consideration when buildings come forward to the council. There's obviously, we have to be policy, or people who come to the council for wanting to build something have to be policy compliant. But there's also, you know, a moral part that we need to play as part of that. And we write into the policies, and we work with developers to write into policies certain things that they are going to contribute to the local area when, as the building is being built or once it's been developed. And that can be a variety of different things. It's called S106 or SIL. There's two different mechanisms, but essentially...
Sorry, could you explain what those things
Community Infrastructure Levy, or a Section 106, is part of a policy. Essentially, without getting too deep into it, essentially it's the developer giving money to the council/community in different ways in order that various things can come forward. And that's how a lot of these parks, it's how the Avenue Park, is it Avenue Park, sorry? Avenue Park, new facilities there will have been, almost certainly, I think off the top of my head, will have been built using developer money. We went to a bridge opening in Brentford today. It's how that has come forward. It's how improvements to parks and open spaces and landscaping and trees and where GP surgeries can be part of a development. I mean, that's a difficult thing because I know people then get back and say, well, you're building all these flats, but you're not providing the schools, you're not providing the GP, you're not providing this. And getting the NHS on board and providing enough GPs in an area is that sort of partnership working. And we do put money as part of that into schools. You know, we expanded massively over the last 15 years our school places because there was that need, and some of that money came from developers. So there's that big overarching thing as part of providing that housing. All of those other aspects are there. And while there is policy involved in that, there's also looking at what the needs of the community are, and community being people in the community and residents groups being able to bid for that money to get those improvements, like you see that example there.
That's really sorry, that's really helpful. I'm being told off for not spending too long on this, but do you know what? I don't really care.
He's the chair.
We're not moving. it's so interesting. So you're saying that not only, like, if you think of our surgery is near Asda, and beforehand we had like a bunch of, basically a car park, and now it's like, actually it does have green, yeah, it's got flats and stuff, but it's got green spaces, it just feels nicer, there's a shopping area and stuff. So yeah, thank you. So there's two benefits. One is that you create shared common space for everyone to use, and the second is that there's investment that you can use in other places.
And the housing.
And the housing.
And we're housing
Oh, no, we're
people
not talking
because
about
we.
housing.
No, I know, but that's you know.
Yeah.
Number one thing,
Yeah.
because without a stable accommodation, and I could talk about it forever.
No, we're
but
not
that
gonna-
without that affects people's mental health. You know, people who are stuck in temporary accommodation, people who are stuck in poor accommodation, is detrimental, hugely detrimental to their mental health. And so by providing these accommodation, and I know people have issues about height and massing and all of those things, and maybe people will speak about that, but actually having that for people there. And I go round and I get to open various, flats and various buildings and houses and stuff, but meeting the people that have moved in, and a lady a couple of weeks ago said to me, and I said, I'm sorry about delays, and I know there's been a various things. She says, and genuinely this is what she said, I think I've won the lottery. By being in that accommodation with her children. And, that's what it means to people. And, I get things like that all the time, and that really matters.
And the quality of housing is actually really high. Thank you. Sorry, you've got a question, and there's one at the back as well.
My name's Charlotte Edwards, and I live in Hounslow. I just wondered, with developments like the one near Asda and the very posh new flats in Brentford, do you have a way to make sure that as many of the flats as possible are bought for people to actually live in and not as investments or as Airbnbs?
Sorry, do you want to take that one?
I'm absolutely happy to. There are various avenues for that. We do try to ensure as many council houses are built as possible, so genuine council houses. We have our own investment into that as part of, and some of that is our own building that we do. Some of that is purchasing the developments that have gone up, purchasing some of those flats as council housing. Developers also have an expectation to provide affordable housing. Now, there's affordable housing with a capital A that is a standard policy compliant thing. There is try and use a genuinely affordable, and there are various levels of it. And there's various tenures and all that kind of thing. But that's about negotiation with the developer. That's about negotiation with lawyers as well, that we try and get the maximum amount of that affordable housing, genuinely affordable housing, while also ensuring that the developer can then go ahead and build it. Because sometimes you get to a point where you've negotiated something and policies change, they have and they do, and that thing doesn't then get built. So you say on paper you've maximised the affordable housing, but actually you've done nothing because it's been too hard for that developer to actually build it. And you have to go back to the drawing board, you have to try again, and it creates those delays. So we do all we can to get council housing, affordable housing. There are lots of private accommodation as well, and that's a good thing. And the majority of those, they wouldn't be built if they weren't going to be sold and be lived in and be used, and the rent from those would be there. So, this idea that they're all empty just isn't true. I mean, sure there are some, but, people are living there. People are moving into communities. I went to see the outdoor cinema in Brentford with those nice posh flats. And there was a couple in front, and they were talking about going up. And I was very tempted to speak to them, and I didn't. But they were talking about going up to their flat and being able to come down, and they were really positive about this environment, this way of living. And those are people who are living in those flats, who are coming down, who are enjoying the environment, talking about going to Morrison's, those kind of things. You just think, this is the type of area, this is the type of community, and that's the type of thing that we want to see everywhere across the borough.
Thank you very much. A question at the back. If you could just introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Chandrika Makwana, and I'm from Feltham. My question is about, do you take similar issues into account when you put different types of people in homes for multiple occupancies, And what are the criteria? Because we've had loads of problems where different, somebody who's got mental issues, somebody's just left the prison, somebody they're put in together in 6 rooms in one house, and we've had to call police and stuff all the time. But does the council just give permission to just change them into 6 rooms, a house, and then put all different mentality people together? Which is an issue. It's a mental health issue as well.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Just a follow-up question to you. Are you talking about private accommodation, private house? It is a house of multiple occupancy.
Yeah, house of multiple occupancy is obviously being used by council or some welfare services to put people in there.
Well, yes and no is the answer to that. Possibly, that's why I ask. Possibly it could be council tenants, the council using those properties to place people, but not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily have to be. It could be a private house that's changed into a house, an HMO, a house of multiple occupancy, and it's being used by a variety of different services or no services. It just is people themselves going in and renting those rooms. So there are a variety of different avenues that those people go into those accommodation. In terms of the rules around HMOs, there used to be a sort of split between if it was 5 bedrooms or 5 rooms or less, it didn't require planning permission. Anything more than that did. Now we have an Article 4 directive in the borough that means any house from now, in fact last year, that wants to change into a house of multiple occupancy has to get planning permission. Now, what that means is we're not going to necessarily stop everybody, but we have much more control in changing their house, but we have much more control over the houses that do, the landlords that do, and those that don't. And we can stop people through the planning process, whereas we had, it was much more difficult before we brought in that Article 4 directive. It's been a very positive thing. It's meant that the control is there. But it'd be interesting to talk about if there are some specific issues that you are facing. I'm happy to talk to you afterwards about those and seeing if we can address those. But it's a complex thing, people trying to get housing, people in lots of different circumstances, trying to find places to live. And this is why I want to try and build as many homes as possible. Not any home anywhere for any price, but the right homes and making sure that they're in the right place and that they are housing people. That's why it's really important.
Thank you. One more question over there. If everyone's comfortable, I think this is such an interesting topic and quite broad, and it's covering lots of different areas for the council. So happy to continue with it for last question, though. Sadly.
Okay. You're gonna have to bear with me for a second. So it says, what is the council going to do to tackle residents dumping mass household goods and waste? Will the council consider doing a review in the enforcement team? Because currently, when they issue it doesn't seem to be that they issue a relevant fine for what they dump. Personally, a lot of people do believe that it should be compulsory that a fine is given at all times for people that have been caught. And lastly, sorry, I was for the review of the enforcement team to be independent.
Thank you very much. That's Anthony Stoke, who did the question online.
Thank you for the question. Yes, the council is reviewing the enforcement policy. Like there is different bodies at the moment doing different things like parking and park rangers and different enforcement. So the policy we are working at the moment is like one policy where council will issue fines, like parking warden can able to issue a fine who's fly tipping. So we are working on that policy at the moment.
Thank you. But move across to Councillor Shivraj.
Anthony, thank you for asking that question. Yeah. Actually, fly tipping is, we take it very seriously and we are actively involved in tackling fly tipping. In 2023 and 2024, there were 2,880 fly tipping reported, out of which 99% were cleared in 24 hours. 285 FPNs were issued this year. on the basis if we had evidence, and the evidence has to be solid so that it cannot be challenged. And to tackle fly tipping, we, as a council, we created a special waste services, which is monitoring, enforcing, investigating, and SWS teams go out daily to hotspots, and they issue FPNs if we have valid proof. And we encourage people and residents to report fly tipping by Fix My Street. We also run a promotional campaign. One of them is Keep Britain Tidy, and which is at the moment running in Hounslow West as well as Cranford. And what we do is we put posters on lampposts and stickers on bins, as well as on our Hounslow website we have information how to recycle and where to recycle and what to recycle. And there is another promotional campaign run by the council that is No Time to Waste, with a view to improving recycling habits for residents, which is on a Hounslow website. And to be very honest, we have targets to improve recycling, 45% by 2025, 50% by 2030. At present, we are 37.5, and we take it seriously. We will not tolerate dumping. If there is evidence, we will prosecute them. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Oh, just if you just wait, we'll come to Councillor Dunn shortly. You've had your arm up so long, it's going to. I have to take you to hospital in a minute. So go for it.
I did feel the blood flowing up my arm. But my name's Connor. I'm from Hounslow East, and I was going to ask about other topics today, but fly tipping is something that I see on my private road a lot. And I think a lot of these developments that we were talking about earlier are built on private land, and there's private land and private roads that are used by private residents. And from what I gather, the council can't always enforce on those private roads. And as a resident, it upsets me because a lot of these private contractors don't always have the powers to properly enforce fly tipping or illegal parking on private land. So I'm curious what the council is planning to do to help private land in its jurisdiction sort of operate more clean in terms of fly tipping and illegal parking. Because I think for the past 3 years on my private development, it doesn't seem to really get enforced at all, especially the illegal parking. So I'm wondering what the council is planning on doing, if anything, about private land, fly tipping and illegal parking.
Thank you. Yeah, fly tipping on private land is a concern for us, and it's been quite regular in private owned lands. At the moment, it's a concern to us, and we are working on it with the planning department, with the enforcement department and highways, how we tackle it, because it is a very complicated issue, and we cannot just go and enforce on a private land, because first of all, we have to inform the owner of the private land that this is going on your property, and can you do the enforcement? If he doesn't, then we can take some steps, but there's a lot of legalities involved in it. But we are trying our best that how we can resolve this issue. Yeah.
Well, I have to say that is surprising. I didn't realise that. I would have thought that private land would have been. It's an environmental issue. Councillor Dunn, do you want to share your thoughts on that? And general and the question
Happy
generally.
to, yeah, thanks. I mean, I was going to come in on the level of the fines initially. We do issue the maximum. Hi, Anthony. By the way, nice to see you. We do issue, or we use the maximum level of fines that are available. I mean, I've fly tipping's never been in my particular portfolio, but I sit on London Council's Transport and Environment Committee, and a lot of the other committee members, because we all have slightly different portfolios and things, a lot of them do have fly tipping. We actually got 3 of those members now elected to Parliament, and they have vowed to get fly tipping on the national agenda. And I noticed that Deirdre Costigan was actually, who's a former councillor from Ealing, was debating in the chamber only yesterday, I think, about fly tipping and the real issues it causes for communities. And so we're really keen to have that the maximum level fines increased so that we can then put our fines up to those levels. On the stuff on private land, yeah, that's tricky. I mean, because not all fly tipping is necessarily deemed as an environmental health. It is a problem. If it gets to the point where you've got vermin, etc., then it becomes more of a problem. We perhaps have more powers then to do something. But I would always encourage people to find out what the reporting routes are for the particular area of private land that they live on. And you know, if you live on a private development and the landowner or the estate manager or whoever it is not clearing fly tipping, then do come to the council, because we can put pressure on them. As Councillor Garrawal said, you know, we would certainly have a duty to inform them this has happened, you need to remove it. Ultimately, if they don't, we can remove it and then charge them for it, but that is then a cost. You know, it's a cost to the council that we then have to try to recover. So, as Councillor Garrawal said, it is a bit complex.
Thank you. That's learn something new every day.
And just to add on to this, like, do let the council know, because these developers, when they come with next planning permission, we know that their development in the borough, they're not doing their work properly. We can ask the questions on a planning committee that at this development, you promised this, you're not delivering. So why we give you planning permission on this site? So we can put pressure on that. So do engage with the council.
Thank you. Just to follow Councillor Garrawal. Sorry, I'm so used to going to doctor meetings. You're all doctors today. Councillor Garrawal, do you have, from the prosecutions that you carried out, do you have an idea, you have a profile of the sort of people that carry out fly tipping and maybe looking at working down the line and trying to help them?
See, the thing is, Chair, that I have got no prosecution evidence so far, but there are places which most of the councillors know where it is happening. And it's just very complicated, as I mentioned earlier. Like, we have to inform them that they sort the problem out, or otherwise we are going to take some action. And some people do abide by that, and some people don't. But I cannot name them, but we know which organizations are doing that. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bath.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to add to what has already been said actually around fly tipping on private land. It is a massive challenge, and I think out of all the casework that I've had over the years, the ones that I've really stumbled upon is persistent fly tipping in an area which the council has very little sort of enforcement powers. I mean, having said that, we have had some success where we've been able to work closely with finding who the owner is and getting the owner to remove it. But in many cases, sometimes it's really hard to actually locate who the owner is as well. So I think, as has been said by my colleagues, I think it's important to obviously bring it to the attention of your local councillor and see if we can come up with some kind of plan. It may be that it's going to be a long-term plan. It might take a while to sort of understand the complexities of this thing. And as Councillor Garrawal said, I wasn't aware of this until particular casework that I had some years back, that the legal complexities around actually taking action are really complicated and long-winded, and so it is a massive challenge. Yeah.
Thank you. We've got a follow-up question.
Sorry, Chair, it's not a follow-up question, it's a process. The process on residential dumping, I'm on about residential estates, for instance, that are dumping residential items like mattresses that have got bed bugs and more. It is a biological issue. And then you report it to the caretakers go and get the CCTV. They see the people on CCTV, but the enforcement team are not knocking on doors, and then to identify, even though they have been identified, then go and speak to the person, and it's not given a fine. And the thing is, how we see this is, you as a company, I know you're the council, but you're like a company as well, which pay out this. And the thing is, you know, if you ask Tom or Andrea Tidy, how much do you pay out on a regular basis, and it's not given back to the council because there's no fine that warrants that? That's the deterrent why I think it needs to be compulsory. Sorry to thing on it. It's just, I know you're saying fly tipping. I'm on about residential dumping of items, mattresses, chairs, electrics, knives, you name it, is dumped. Even down to where you saw somebody dumping medical supplies with needles and so on. And so there is a bit of an issue on that. So that's why I was saying residential dumping, not fly tipping, sorry, just to change the question.
It's an important differential.
Anthony, I can assure you that the enforcement team does give FPNs, and I cannot disclose that now, but I can disclose it to you personally. It has happened recently where residents have been dumping and there was evidence, and it is me who has reported it with evidence. First I send them a warning notice, and then even they were fined. Even there are people in the borough who their dogs are falling on the payments. Even they have been given FPNs. I have reported it with evidence. So if somebody reports it and you have evidence, the enforcement team does it. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Bath?
I was just going to add that I think you're talking about fly tipping on housing estate. Yeah. So I think there can be a solution. If there's persistent fly tipping, or then you can talk to your local councillors who represent you, and you could possibly ask for maybe a skip to be installed on the estate every now and then, just to have. I can't promise that will happen, but it's something you could certainly ask your local councillors to sort of advocate on your behalf on it, because it is something that is possible to do.
Thank you. We might have to wrap this up soon. I'll come back to you in a moment. Ben, do you want to do yours? Could you like to introduce yourself and say who you are?
Good evening. My name's David Cook. I'm from Brentford Dock, and we had exactly this problem a few years ago. And I applied for a Freedom of Information request on how many people have been prosecuted by the council, and it was on one hand the amount of prosecutions that the council had carried out.
Thank you.
So I think there's a distinction between prosecutions and FPNs. So it depends on the question that you ask.
FPN means fixed penalty notice.
Yeah, so that's what.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, it wasn't. Sorry, it wasn't really a question. It was I applied for a Freedom of Information request from the council, and they told me on the answer that they'd only prosecuted 5 people.
Right.
We've got private land in Brentford. We had a big argument about the gates. Some of you might remember that. But since we've had the gates put in, it's not an issue so much.
So that's good, isn't it?
So I think the distinction is prosecution versus a fixed penalty notice. 2 comments, and then we might need to move on, because then I'll get sacked halfway through chairing a meeting. They'll never invite me back.
Yeah. As a retired scientist, I would like to say you should go for the root cause. Why are people actually dumping the thing?
And that's what I was trying to work out, actually.
Just get to the root cause.
Who and why?
Because sometimes there's not enough places, or the council does not come to pick up the thing, and people don't know what to do. So the root cause is very important.
So I think that's a piece of work which I'm not sure if the council has done, but maybe it's something to explore.
Yeah, I don't drive, and that means it's essentially impossible for me to get anything to Spaceway. And I know, because I can go online and I know what I'm doing. I know if I've got something large to get rid of, I can book and the council will come and get it. And I know that, for instance, when I had a broken air fryer, I got on the bus, I took it to Curry's on the Great West Road. But a lot of people probably don't know how to get rid of stuff. Maybe you need a public information campaign so they know what choices they've got.
So as far as recycling is concerned, if you have any waste, which you have, if you go on the Hounslow website, it gives you every detail, what to do and where to do. But I do understand if it's a small item, it's a bit tricky. But if they are bulky items, we do provide a service at a very decent cost. And to be very honest, we are trying to work out how we can resolve this problem for people who cannot drive or do not drive. That's something we can come up to, but we don't have a solution at the moment. Yeah.
Councillor Ajmer, go on.
Just to answer this gentleman's question, we are trying to get to the root cause of it, because we think where families come from overseas, they don't understand the process or the language. We're actually going into schools to educate the children so they can come home and educate their parents and that. But I think people have just got into a rut because we clear it within 24 hours when it's reported. They think it's their right. They can dump it there and we'll clear it again and again. We are trying. And so, as I say, the route we found, or we're trying to find, is through the children to get involved into the households. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. So that's what needs, a bit of passion, a bit of enthusiasm. Right, take a deep breath. I think I've got some more questions here, but I'm not doing very well. I've only done 2 in an hour. So the good news is that we're really getting to grips with all these questions. The bad news is, sadly, you're not going to finish it. When does it open up tomorrow morning, the college?
The college.
No. We hope you got your sleeping bags.
There are enough sandwiches.
Yeah, we've got food, and we should be okay. Any questions from the floor? Go for it. If you could introduce yourself and just say in what capacity you're asking the question.
Yes, good evening. My name's Nick Moore. I'm chair of the Tudor Estate Residents Association, Hamworth Park. My question is regarding the Power League in Gnarlhead Road and their application to put an extra 2 7-a-side football pitches in. I did make a comment online and registered it. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, I can't find my comment anywhere on the planning application, and my main query was that whilst our Residents Association doesn't disapprove of the application, we must insist that finally 2 pedestrian crossings are installed on the East Slip Road going towards Twickenham on the A316 and the West Slip Road coming from Twickenham on the A316. There is absolutely no indication whatsoever that there are pedestrians crossing on these slip roads. And the slip road coming down west from Twickenham is a 50 mile an hour. The 30 mile an hour roundel warning sign is actually on the roundabout. I have campaigned for at least the past 2 years for the 30 mile an hour roundel to be moved 150 metres up the slip road to give people a chance that they can slow down. And when Power League were initially approved for their development, our Residents Association campaigned again, or then, for these pedestrian crossings. Nothing's happened. I've had several meetings with TfL, Hounslow Council, Hounslow Highways. Everybody agrees it is a nightmare, it is dangerous, but nothing's happened. It must be part of the approval that these pedestrian crossings are installed and that they are very visible. Because as I say, there is no indication that pedestrians are crossing, and it is used mainly by youngsters from the age of around about 10 to 20. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got a 10-year-old, and honestly, that would be absolutely frightening. And there's lots of evidence actually about road safety and speed, and 30 miles an hour is certain death, isn't it? So, really interesting question, Tom. Councillor Tom. Oh my God, we're getting on to first name terms now. No, not yet. Not until 5 to 8. Councillor Bruce, would you like to kick off?
Happy to. I don't know. I know the Power League thing you talk about. I know the roads you talk about. I'm not aware of the application. I haven't been aware of the issue that you've been talking about and working and trying to get the crossing. I believe you. It's not that I don't believe you. I just don't know about it. I would be really happy to talk to you about this and pick this up and try and find a way through this, because I agree with you. It doesn't seem, it seems that something does need to happen there. And as a local resident, it's a place I'm afraid I don't go to the Power League, and I drive through, and but I'm glad you've raised it, and let's try and find a solution to this. I'll happily pick this up with you afterwards. Okay, no worries.
Councillor Dunn, do you want to add something about road safety?
So I don't really have anything to add about the particular application or those roads, because I'm not familiar with it particularly myself. I wasn't aware of the request for the zebra crossings, but I will pick this up with the transport team, and obviously in liaison with planning, given that there is a planning application in place. Yeah, but I mean, it sounds like there may be a need for a crossing, regardless of what happens with this particular planning application. Yeah, so probably best if I'll pick it up with the team. If you want to email me about it, that would be great. I mean, just in general, you're quite right about the need for road safety and the evidence that we have around that and around speeding. It makes a huge difference. Not that we want anyone to be hit by a vehicle, but the speed at which someone is hit makes a huge difference as to the level of injury that they might sustain and indeed their chances of survival. We do have a road safety action plan. We've carried out an assessment across the whole borough, and there's an action plan going in place that complements our other transport strategies. And that's looking at particular hotspots across the borough. Obviously, I don't know how this particular one fits in, but certainly very happy to listen to what residents and people who know the area have to say about it.
And actually, there's a link, isn't there, between the speed and the amount of carbon a car produces? Because on the M4, there are often signs saying 60 miles an hour for the environment.
Yeah, for air quality.
Yeah, for air quality, that's it.
Yeah.
Do you want to share your thoughts on that?
That's
a fun fact I wasn't aware of until the other day when I went away.
I mean, yes, there are various things about what speed you drive a vehicle at. I mean, obviously, we want to bring down harmful emissions across the borough, both carbon emissions, but also the tailpipe emissions that pollute the air that we all breathe. And obviously, there are a lot of measures in place. We are now in the expanded ULEZ zone, and that has been very successful. Most vehicles now are ULEZ compliant, and that has already had an effect on air quality. So that's very good to see. But we continue to push forward in that direction. There will be, of course, a big transition to electric cars. We're already starting to see some of that happening, and we as a council have to be prepared for that to ensure that people can transition their vehicles. And so we have our electric vehicle charging strategy. We've pledged to roll out an additional 2,000 EV charging points. But I will say, cars are they cannot be the solution. Electric vehicles are not the solution. We need, in order to be sustainable as a borough, we need people moving to sustainable and active travel. So walking, cycling, public transport, which takes such a much bigger volume of people than individual cars. But we know that for some people and some journeys, cars will be necessary, and that's why we're facilitating that move towards cleaner vehicles, and that's also reflected in our new parking policy that we approved at Cabinet in July, but also our EV charging strategy.
And thank you so much. We'll come back to you in just a moment. Can you just for my information, where does the responsibility of the council end and TfL start, and how does all that work?
Excellent question. So the council has responsibility over most of the roads in the borough, but not the principal roads that are on Transport for London's network, what's known as the I can't even remember TRLN or something. So certain roads like the A4, the A30, A316 are owned and maintained by TfL. Other road, yeah, and that's,
I wonder if that's
and that
a TfL
does
thing.
often become a sticking point because we have less local control over those. But of course, we have a good relationship with TfL, and the leader and I met with the TfL commissioner just last week to discuss various issues, because of course all the public transport, or much of the public transport, is run by TfL, so the buses and the tubes. And the overground network. Then, of course, we have the national rail trains that are run by other operating companies, South Western Railway mostly. So it is a patchwork, but as the council, we have powers to or influence to convene different companies and actors together on that. But when it comes to our transport strategy, I suppose we work alongside TfL, we work alongside the Mayor of London's transport plans. He's set as a target of having 71% of trips undertaken by walking, cycling or public transport by 2041. That's something that we're moving towards, so that's why we're rolling out cycle lanes. That's why we're making it easier for people to walk or wheel around the borough.
And we are lucky, actually, in having such good transport. I'll come to you just a moment, Councillor Bruce. Could you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, just a comment that the two slip roads I'm referring to are TfL's responsibility.
Yeah, that's what we thought. So,
but where they egress and access the Muller Dairy roundabout is Hounslow Council.
Yeah.
And there seems to be a disagreement between the two parties as to who's responsible. Personally, I couldn't care less.
Yeah, and you shouldn't need to. Actually.
It needs to be sorted before. I believe I'm right in saying that over the last 3 years, there have been 8 serious incidents. I believe on one occasion the air ambulance had to come down.
Really?
And people have been hurt. It's not the degree of hurt, it's the fact that people have been hurt. And this has been campaigned for by our Residents Association now for the past 6 years. Thank you.
Councillor, sorry, do you want to...
Just very quickly, Nick, I'm aware of the issue that you've raised because your ward councillors have also raised it with me, and I think there have been 3 site visits between TfL, ourselves, and you. Yeah, absolutely. So you're right, it does need to move forward, and that's in 12 months. Yeah, absolutely. So there's the specifics around the planning application that obviously Tom's agreed to take on, and we'll continue to push. I'm in touch with. Not the commissioner. We didn't raise it with the commissioner when he was with us because we didn't have enough time, to be very honest with you. But that doesn't mean that we're not raising it with his team as well.
Councillor Bruce?
No, I think the point I was going to make on that is the fact that your comment or your comments you wanted to be put against this is that the application is tied, or the crossing is also tied to the application, which in many cases, whether it has a significant impact here, I don't know, but in many cases getting another party involved as well can be positive because they can do some of the running. If you can get a developer or someone who's doing, they can do some of that work as well and trying to liaise with people, and it's on them to try and get this, because if they want their 2 football pitches in this example, then we can do that. So that's quite helpful. I'm not saying it should happen, I have to be, but it seems a good mechanism to support the other bits that are going on as well.
I think it's such an interesting concept of different parties working together, and actually that is in health and the local authority, where the risk lies, or us in primary care and the hospitals, GP and the hospital, it is the interface that's the challenge. And actually, as Councillor Bruce has just pointed out, if you do it well and you have a good working relationship, it can result in a better outcome for everybody. So thank you. It's a really interesting question. And I think, if nothing else, today, if we were to fix that one issue, that it would be an amazing result for us all.
Hi, it's Connor again, and I'm getting the impression that what a lot of people in the room care about, and the council as well, is safety, mental health, and housing affordability. So one thing that I think really helps check all three boxes are improved cycling infrastructure, because they help people have an active mode of transport to get to work and get around to see friends. It helps with housing affordability, because I probably spend, and this is probably an issue for all age groups, but I experience it most with my younger siblings. I spend about £200 less per month getting to work than my brother, simply because I cycle there and he takes public transport. And safety, which is incredibly important, and so this issue of cycleways needs to be handled delicately. In terms of safety, I had an acquaintance get hit or clipped by a car around Bush Corner, which doesn't have a cycleway, and it is being built. Before I go into my questions, I'll say that the council's done a really good job building the cycleways from Waterman's Park down to Brentford. It's probably a lot more controversial around Chiswick High Road. I gather that from talking around even the local bike stores on that high road. But the plans for it to be built further down London Road look good. The two questions I have are, what resources are the council putting in to get C9 built as quickly as possible? As I understand, Hounslow Highways have greater capacity to get that built. And what are the council's wider ambitions for cycling infrastructure beyond C9? So those are two questions. I'll just close with a comment that these blocks are going up along London Road, these new housing blocks. That's great. They will be crammed with people buying bikes. I live in a development, and all the cycle storerooms, when they get built, get crammed with bikes. People use them. So there's definitely coordination that needs to happen between population increase and infrastructure to make sure that there's not mayhem on the roads. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we throw it over to the panel, can I ask if Chandrika Makwana is here? Thank you.
Stand up because I think
We've also got
I'm quite
another
short.
bike-type question.
I'm raising this
which is-
on behalf of the residents of our association, and it's all about the Lime bike. So I'm going to read it as they've written it. Are Lime bikes here to stay in Feltham? If yes, then what is the council and the bike company doing to ensure that they are legitimately used and returned to the proper parking spots, to ensure that teenagers and young children cannot dodge the mechanism and are able to ride them dangerously, and ensure that if the bikes are left in inappropriated places, that they will be immediately removed by the company and put in the right place. They're all over the place in Feltham, lying around. It's on behalf of our residents.
Councillor Dunn, are you okay to kick off with those two questions?
Yeah.
One around bike infrastructure for people who... Sorry, go on.
I'll quickly just say again, what is the council doing to make sure C9 gets built as sensibly and as quickly as possible, and what is the council doing beyond C9?
Yeah.
So just because the YouTube thing, so what's the council doing around C9 is the bike superhighway thing?
Cycleway 9.
Cycleway.
Yeah. So we dropped the
and
superhighway lingo a while back.
Because people weren't cycling fast enough.
It was just that cycleway. There used to be superhighways and quiet ways, but in actual fact, people just want somewhere safe they can
I
ride
think
their
Hounslow
bike.
should have a super duper highway.
A super duper. I like that one. I like that. Super
It's all
duper
about
highway.
marketing, isn't it?
Okay. So yeah, Cycleway 9. Connor, I understand why you're asking the question, because and I'm happy that you're so happy with what has been put in already. But I understand why you're asking the question, because it did take a long time to get it put in. And I know that you've been to some of the consultations with TfL, and they've also talked about some of the length of time it might take. So this is they are currently undertaking the second consultation on this particular stretch of Cycleway 9. So for people who don't know, we've just completed implementation of the stretch, basically from Waterman's Park down to Alexandra Road, which is Brentford Town Centre, effectively. a shortish stretch, but you know, these things take time to build, they take time to go through the consultation process and everything. TfL they did a first consultation on the next stage from Brentford to Hounslow Town Centre. They're now consulting on a shorter stretch, which stops short of Bush Corner, which you mentioned, and there is a reason for that. Unfortunately, Bush Corner, when they did their modelling, their traffic modelling, turned out to be more tricky than they thought because of all the different vehicle movements at that junction and how that would be affected by a cycle lane, which isn't to say that the plan has been dropped, but in order to get something moving quicker rather than waiting until there were plans for the, you know, detailed plans for the whole stretch, they decided, and TfL decided, and Hounslow encouraged them to consult, you know, do their detailed consultation on what they were able to put forward. So that's what's being consulted on at the moment. And as you have alluded to, it could be quite a while before it is actually implemented. With the last section that we've just done, Hounslow Highways were contracted. So Hounslow Highways are our partners, our contractors on our council roads, and they were contracted by TfL in order to put it in, and that meant that we were able to get it in sooner than if TfL had gone through their normal processes. I will be pushing very hard for Hounslow Highways to do the next bit as well, assuming that, you know, they do have the capacity. I'll be working with the transport team and you know, to make sure that hopefully they do have the capacity to do that, because that will enable us to move forward with that more quickly. At the same time, I think we discussed it with the Commissioner last week about making sure that they are still working on what are they going to do, because as you've said, Bush Corner is not a particularly nice place to cycle through at the moment. It's been improved for pedestrians with new crossing points put in, but it's still not particularly safe for cycling. So it is still very important that we move ahead with that next section of Cycleway 9. I should add that all the funding for Cycleway 9 comes from Transport for London, but it's not necessarily a funding issue that delays things. It's more around capacity and the fact that TfL are working on projects all over London. In terms of other plans for cycling, Cycleway 9 is always the big headline one, you know, especially when it was coming through Chiswick. It was the one that got all the press, but it's definitely not the only thing that we're doing for cycling. So we have our priority cycleway network, and will soon be extending cycle lanes on the proper protected cycle lanes on Staines Road, Bath Road, Southall Lane, and Cycleway 1, which goes through Feltham as well. Hopefully that's answered your questions, Connor.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine.
And then Chandrika, about the Lime bikes. So Lime bikes, right. So a little bit of history. So the council doesn't run the Lime bike scheme. We don't contract Lime. We don't issue licenses to Lime. All these things are a little bit beyond our control. There's a lack of regulation in this area, lack of legislation, which means that unlike the e-scooters, so if you're seen in other boroughs, not in ours, but in other boroughs, they have e-scooter trials. Those are very heavily regulated. We don't have the same amount of regulation around the e-bikes. And so any company, you know, can set up an e-bike scheme where they like, really. We don't have regulation or powers to stop them, and nor, shall I say, do we want to stop them, but even if we did, we don't. What we can do is enter into a voluntary agreement, like we have done with Lime in our borough, and we have a memorandum of understanding with them. And one of the things that we've said in that is that they have agreed to is to have the parking bays where the bikes should be parked. They should not be left just lying around on the pavement or elsewhere outside of the bays. And that is different in different boroughs across London, and that in itself is a bit of a problem because, of course, when people get on the bikes to ride them, they don't necessarily stay in one borough. They don't get to the border and say, oh, I'll stop now. They carry on, and so whereas they may get on in one borough where it is allowed to park it on the pavement, then they come into Hounslow and it's not, but it causes some confusion. But we are working with Lime on that, and so they use geofencing, which is supposed to ensure that someone cannot leave a bike outside of the parking bay. So the way it works is you have your app. When you hire the bike, you start the ride by scanning it on your phone. When you come to end the ride, it should know whether you're in the area that you can park on. And the problem is, of course, it's not perhaps as accurate as we would like, which is why you do see sometimes bikes that are frustratingly near a parking bay, but not in it.
That's how I park my car.
So you do...
Near enough is good enough.
In order to deal with that, it then asks you to take a photograph of the bike on your phone, and that is assessed by AI, I understand, and if you're seen to have parked your bike outside of a parking bay or not in the right place, then you can be fined as a user. Now, we do know that the vast majority of bikes are parked properly. However, because the scheme is so popular, and I'm talking 93,000 trips with starting in the borough in July. I don't have the figures for August, but in July there were 93,000 trips starting in the borough. So you can imagine if 5% of those are not parked properly, that is still quite a lot of bikes, which is why you do see those bikes lying around. So we are still working with Lime, with the operator, to try and improve that more. They are required to come and move bikes that are improperly parked. I would encourage people to... We have set up a way to make it easier for you to report bikes, which is using Fix My Street. Lots of you will have that app on your phone for reporting fly tipping, for example. You can report abandoned Lime bikes through the abandoned bike category.
Can I provide a helpful comment on that really quickly?
Go for it, Connor.
Oh, just a moment, if you use the mic.
Yeah, sorry. Very sorry. So just a helpful comment is one time I reported bikes to Lime, and they responded 20 minutes later saying, yeah, we'll look into that. And then the bikes were gone like a day or two later. And I think not everyone knows to do that, but they were super quick on that.
Yeah.
This is a really good topic. Everyone's got their hands up. Sadly, we're running out of time. We'll play a little game now. We've got less than 10 minutes. We'll do short questions and short answers, starting now.
I have a short question. In Chiswick, I know that you've put the Lime bays in, and I think it's the same as everywhere. They're partly being used. But there's a pathway, Strand on the Green, in Chiswick, and it's a very beautiful but quite narrow in places way, and it's technically not, people aren't allowed to cycle. But people are cycling along it, and they're using Lime bikes along it. So 2 questions around that. 1, can we get it geofenced on Lime bikes so that at least they can't go through at speed, knocking children into the river on their electric bikes? And secondly, can we put some decent signage up along Strand on the Green that's consistent and people can understand there's no cycling? Because people, I know it's the correct sign just to have a red circle with a bike in it, but half the population interprets that as I'm allowed to cycle here. So we need something that actually says no cycling. Could we do something to address that particular problem in this particular location?
Just one word
Please.
answers to both. Yes and yes.
Yes, okay.
Maybes
I'll
will,
look into
maybes
it.
will do. Yeah. Are you telling me the cycle with a cross through it means you can't cycle? All these years? Okay, Nick, you want to say short, one word question, like sentence, all right, sentence.
Just
have a
regarding
sentence.
the Lime bikes, we have an experimental Lime bike in Elizabeth Way on the Hamworth Park Residents Association.
Mm-hmm.
experimental parking bay should be for 6 months, and then there should be consultation with local residents. 4 months later, the bay's still there. There's been no consultation, and unfortunately, I'd have to disagree with Connor. We have bikes that are abandoned for anywhere between 4 and 11 weeks on our estate, regularly 7 to 9, within a 300-metre semicircle of the parking bay. Thank you.
Thank you. Short answer?
So I didn't quite get onto the bit about the ETMO, the Experimental Traffic Management Order, which I was coming on to. So to put it succinctly, they were put in initially for an initial period of 6 months. That's been extended. All the parking bays are currently under an experimental traffic order. These have all been consulted on as part of the curbside and parking strategy consultation that took place last year. It then got somewhat delayed coming to Cabinet due to various elections and things, but came to Cabinet in July. Cabinet said, in principle, we want to make these experimental traffic orders permanent. We want to keep the bays. However, we would like to see 12 months of data, and because the latest ones went in September, that 12 months of data will happen this month. We want a review of the parking bay locations, because we know there have been issues with some of them, and I can't remember what else. That was basically it. So therefore, I would be expecting the vast majority of bays to be staying where they are and being made into a permanent traffic order this autumn.
Thank you. Councillor Bruce?
It was just going back to the point I think Connor was making about cycling infrastructure and how that's linked to new development. And I just wanted to make the point, this is what I was talking about earlier with the acronyms I used, S106 and SIL. Essentially the difference...
We should ask the audience what they mean. See if they're paying attention.
Essentially, the difference is with S106, the developers are more specified about the areas that they will have to spend money on, education, health, etc. SIL is just a big pot depending on various factors. But both of those have gone through. So we do that as an annual process, essentially a bidding process, and not C9 because that's TfL funded, but the other ones, or some of the other ones at least, money from that has gone through to supporting that infrastructure. So that's how that all ties up, those things, that the developments are there, money goes into various aspects, and it comes back out, in some cases in the parks, but also into the cycling infrastructure.
And it can improve your mental health, actually. So
Indeed, yeah.
Perfect. So can we do a quick straw poll? Who owns a bike? Who rides a bike? We'll check you lot out. My wife cycled from London to Paris. Yeah, but do you know, nobody cares about the person at home looking after the kids. The 4 most miserable months of my life. I had to go to blooming Paris to meet her, and she's the hero. Not right. It's nothing. Right, we've got a couple of minutes left. I've got one. I've got the stabiliser. I'm waiting for that C9 thing to be built. Right, any burning questions? But they've got to be kind of fun as well, because we're all knackered.
Oh, we like fun.
Oh. Short then.
I'm a member of Hatton Fields, and that's under threat from an industrial estate that's planned to be built. And I've got to say the council have done a brilliant job down the road at Bedfont Lakes, which is used by hundreds of people. You've already mentioned tonight how good it is for your mental health to go out into the open. Well, Hatton Fields would like to keep it like that.
So, sadly, this isn't a short answer. I'll try to be as short as I can. So, I understand the concerns that people in that area and people across the borough have about green open spaces. We talked about how important we think they are for mental health, how much we put into them, 21 green flags or something in various parks, other infrastructure going in. All of those things are massively important. Alongside that is also housing and employment. So as part of the local plan process that we've been going through, which is essentially a very large plan looking right across the borough about how developments, and developments of all types, commercial, housing, employment, should come through. Part of that is looking at what the designation of some aspects of Greenbelt should be. Now, we had a previous iteration of this where essentially the whole area of Hatton Field and some others would be de-designated. The current proposal, and we're just about to start, I think this week the consultation starts, or maybe next week, on what's called the Regulation 19, the final stage of this local plan process before it goes through to inspection, and the next stage would be approval, hopefully, if all those things flow through, is a far reduced section of Hatton Field. And the bit that actually I think is the usable bit is being protected and kept as field. And there is a much smaller section that's owned by a private company already to be de-designated, along with some other areas, because that's the employment need. So it's not, I just fancy building on some green bits, that isn't it. It's what's the quality, and this is what the Labour government are talking about, grey belt rather than green belt. What's the quality? Lots of our green belt is actually, lots of the national green belt is grey belt. And so thinking about the quality of it, but also what's the need for employment and housing, but we're only talking about employment in this case, in the local area. And there's a huge increase need for that without any additional housing, but as well as the housing. So that's why we have to find that balance about building that. So if you look at the latest consultation that's coming out for this Regulation 19, either this week or next week, it should start, you'll be able to see in that the site allocations and how the green belt bit has completely changed and is very different. That's not to say we're not looking at de-designating some aspects of that, but the majority is not. And I think that's a really important point. Beyond that, though, that's just about the designation. Anyone who wants to build on that still then has to go through all the planning process. It's not just, oh, something will be built next week. They still have to follow all of those things in order before anything can be built. And they will be able to, we will insist on them, I'll tell you now, if I'm still in this post, I will, putting money into the rest of Hatton Field in order to improve that and other things like cycling and all those other things as well. So it's trying to find that right balance of things. And I know my answer won't appease everybody and people will still be upset about that. But that's, looking at those compromises and trying to work with people and listening to what people have said, because that's the important thing. People weren't happy. It's trying to make sure, can we meet our housing need? Can we meet our employment need? Can we move forward what people are saying about their green space? Can we improve the borough in some way? All of those things, bringing that into the mix. Sorry, that wasn't short.
That was not. Should not remind me not to ask you any more questions. But Councillor Chaudhry, can I ask you, just for these new developments, could you just say, briefly, not like him, just opportunities that gives, lends itself for learning and skills and employment and education and stuff? Because actually this is a borough that's growing. A borough that has an ambition to grow and to kind of try things differently. And actually, it lends itself to lots of opportunities, doesn't it, if we put in the right infrastructure?
I think it's really, really important with infrastructure to think about the opportunities, obviously skills, employment, but with us, we're trying our level best as a council. We've got youth skills employment guarantee. We've been working on with other partners, organisations as well for our youths. And we have been working closely, but I think it is extremely important. And with Councillor Bruce, I think you always stay on top of everything with these things.
And working with health as well.
100%. I've done that for the last 2 years, and now Councillor Bath is doing a great job.
It's a link that people don't often make. Well done, guys. You made it. Yes. Give yourselves a little pat on the back. I'll hand back to our leader, but just a round of applause for our cabinet for giving up their time and answering. Honestly, I've learnt loads about planning. Sills, what's a sill? That's all I want to know. No. That's a question for them.
That's the quiz afterwards.
We will be asking quizzes in return for sandwiches at the back if you're hungry. But I'll hand over to our leader.
Thank you, Tauk. Can we have a round of applause for our chair this evening? He's been great.
I've learnt loads today. Main thing is I've got to ride that bike.
You've got to ride that bike, yeah. So I think I might have to join you on that one. Councillor Dunn's been trying to get me on a bike since I became leader. Thank you all for coming along. Each question time has its own character, and I've certainly enjoyed this one. It's been very different from the last one that we did, but the flow of conversation's been really, really great, and we've picked up some stuff from that. So thank you very, very much. It would be remiss of me on a day like today not to reference the report that was released earlier today about the Grenfell tragedy, and just to mark that. So if you'll indulge me for a second, I'll just read out a statement that we as a council have prepared in response to that. And it just reads that Hounslow Council once again extends its deepest sympathies to the families, friends and survivors affected by the tragic events of June 14th, 2017. The loss of 72 lives in such a devastating fire remains a profound tragedy that's deeply affected communities across London and the country. We of course welcome the report's findings and recommendations, and we recognise the need for vigilance and ongoing action to ensure such an appalling tragedy never occurs again. And we remain committed to putting residents' safety first, and will rigorously examine the report to ensure we are working to comply with its recommendations. We owe it to the victims of Grenfell, their families, and all our residents to take these lessons seriously, learn from them openly, and to act decisively to prevent any similar tragedy from ever happening again. And we do encourage any resident with concerns or queries regarding fire safety to contact our housing services team. There's a telephone number and an email address as well. By way of reassurance, in the immediate aftermath of Grenfell, we did a thorough inspection of our own council stock. We did find a problem in one block, actually in this ward, which was remedied straight away, and we've been very lucky. But obviously, there are private blocks as well, and part of our work as influencing in the post-Grenfell world is to influence those private developers to make sure that they are also taking this as seriously, and this report is a key moment in that. So I hope that is helpful, and we absolutely remember those who tragically lost their lives on that evening, and the effect that it's had on families and communities since then.
Thank you. It's a sombre note, actually. We've identified some issues, actually, if you think about it. We want to prevent things. We want to work on preventing you getting ill, but also preventing you, with the infrastructure and stuff. And I think you have got a really good team who seem to take an interest in, Hans is a place to be.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys. Have a good evening.